Over 170 years ago, Henry David Thoreau observed, "The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation." Is this you? Do you feel trapped in the rat race we call life? Are you truly the person you desire to be? Are you unhappy with where you find yourself physically, mentally, or spiritually? Let's make the life changes necessary to empower you with happiness and contentment, belief and confidence in yourself. Join the discussion with countless other people who want nothing more than to be the best version of themselves that they can be. Welcome to Better with Jimmy Blackman. Hello, Denny. How are you?
Doing good, Jimmy. Good to see your face.
Good to see you. I see a lot of critters behind you there. Do you ever have nightmares, Denny? Like things attack you in your dreams?
No, just usually stuff getting away.
Well, you took care of everything in the room around you, so I guess it wouldn't be a nightmare. They might have nightmares about Denny Sturgis. Do you think African critters go to check their closet at night to make sure Denny's not there?
Oh, I don't think so, but they have enough to worry about with all the predators over there.
I guess so. You got an African trip coming up this year, don't you?
No, we went a few years ago. Marie and I did. We're going to Australia here on the 11th.
That's right, Australia. I knew I'd heard that on one of the other podcasts that you were on here recently. So we'll get into that a little bit. Your travels and I don't know if you have any statistics or anything. Do you know how many critters you've killed on how many continents? Do you have any numbers?
I never really kept track of the numbers. I've hunted 6 continents, Africa being multiple times, 15 times I've been over there. In Australia, I think 6 or 7 times.
Always with traditional equipment?
That's all I've ever done. I've never rifle hunted, or I hunted one year with a compound just to try it out, and it wasn't for me.
Always with your longbows?
Longbows and recurves.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to jump ahead here. How did the relationship, I mean, you were synonymous with Black Widow these days and have been for quite a few years. You shot a lot of Black Widow longbows. How did that come to be?
Dan Bertalin was doing a consortium, and they were videos. So they would have non-competing companies, traditional bow, compound bow, arrows, broadheads, camo, and they all joined together and supported each other. And we were helping him as cameramen. And he had a hunting camp, and I met Ken Beck there, and we just became the best of friends. He was actually about the age of my dad, and he had a son that he lost when he was 16 that was my age. So he's always kind of been like my second dad, and we just became friends, and I'm a very loyal person, and we started a friendship that lasts still now. When we drive through Nixon, Missouri, we stop and see Ken. So
yeah. What year was that when you first did that?
I think it was 89.
Okay. So 89, big year really for what would become known as traditional archery. And I mean, that's the year that TJ started Traditional Bowhunter. And that was really right around the time of the resurgence of folks, kind of some folks that wanted to go back from compounds to traditional. So that was a pivotal time right there.
Yeah, the numbers started increasing back the other way. Instead of everybody switching to compound, it seemed like we were gaining interest again back in the traditional side.
Yeah, I think everyone our age, and you're just a couple years older than me, but we everybody kind of went through that. It sounds like except you. Because both of us had a bow in our hand, I think at about 3 years old. My dad shot the old American rounds and traveled around shooting tournaments as well. My parents were a good bit older. My dad was born in 31. So I've got a 70-year-old brother. So I was a little bit of a late accident in 68. And by the time I could walk good, he had a longbow in my hand. And we shot those up until late 70s, and then the compounds were really hitting mainstream by that point. And we went to compounds, tried them out for a few years, and then there again, late 80s, early 90s, it just became, to me, it was almost like rifle hunting. It got to where I remember killing deer and just thinking it was easy, and it wasn't a real challenge anymore. And so I headed back the other direction. It sounds like you stayed faithful.
Well, I tried it one year. I didn't like getting beat at the archery range. And when I tried them, they were the old four-wheelers, but I picked one up and it was easier to shoot, but I just felt like I was playing basketball with the rim set at 8 foot. So I didn't want to do that. So I moved back to the 10-foot rim.
Yeah, the first one I got was the Bear Polar LTD, the old 6-wheel.
Yeah, those were a metal contraption, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. But I thought I got Santa Claus brought that to me, and I thought I was king there for a few years. Had at least, I mean, we were dirt poor, so you just didn't go buy a dozen arrows. So I probably had at least 20 mismatched aluminum arrows, different sizes, different lengths. Some of them had 2 vanes, some of them had 3. Just throw them in the quiver and shoot at frogs. Well, what was it like growing up? You know, your dad was really an icon, and you lost your dad last year. And much like he was 85, my dad was 85 when he passed away a few years ago as well. And really, your dad made a mark on traditional archery. Wrote a lot of articles. I remember reading the stuff and seeing he was really active in the sport. What was it like growing up with Denny Sturgis Sr.?
He was the best dad you could imagine for someone like me. We started shooting at 3 years old. I was 3 years old, and he was my mentor as far as that. And my dad, when I turned 12, I went to work in the summers, construction. I know it's frowned on now, but he treated me like a man. I hunted on my own. He'd point me in the right direction. I worked up high with them. I remember some of my buddies, spring break would come and they were going to, their families were taking them to Florida, and they said, "You can come. My parents invited you to come with us." And I'd stay home and roof with my dad and his partner, and I'd get a nice tan, and everybody thought I was down in Florida, but I was working. I'd have rather hung out with those guys. They both bow hunted. And when I graduated high school, I could have went to just about any college. I'd won a writing contest, but I didn't want to. I wanted to be a carpenter. So I worked, and we became partners. He was the best man at my wedding. We hunted all over. He wasn't much of an international hunter, but if it was deer and turkeys, we went all over the United States. And the nice thing about having a dad like that is you have a lot of great memories and adventures, but when you lose them, it's very tough.
It is.
Life, it's not the same. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the first couple of seasons after my dad passed away. Every time I killed a deer on the drive home, that's who I called. And my dad just, it made his day to sit in a recliner and get a call that it didn't matter if it was a 90-pound doe with a self bow. He wanted to hear everything about the hunt and everything. And I remember the first doe I killed, and I got in the car, and she's in the back, or in the truck, she's in the tailgate, and I pick up my cell phone, and it dawns on me, he's not there to call now. And so it's, for those out there that have that relationship, don't take it for granted. You got 2 guys here that absolutely can tell you at this point. I'd love to be able to talk to him about every hunt I do, because it really made his day, and He took me on so many. I'll never forget. I hunted. We belonged to a little hunting club, John's Mountain Wildlife Management Area in northern Georgia, and we had a club that was adjacent to it. That just a small hunting club, archery club. And I had always hunted with him when I was really small. And I remember him telling me all fall, all right, you're a big boy now. You're gonna hunt by yourself this year. You're gonna hunt alone. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm all fired up. This sounded good. I'm a grown man now. I was probably 10, I guess. And back then we didn't have climbing stands. The old bakers were out, and we had one, but of course you're apt to die in one of those climbing stands back then. So we made stands out of 2x4s. We just nail them into trees. And I remember him taking me in about half an hour before daylight, got me in the stand, got me strapped to the tree, and he started to walk away. And the only thing he heard in the darkness was me crying, come get me. You're not leaving me in the middle of the woods by myself. So my first hunt by myself didn't turn out. I'm sure you were okay, Denny. I was not. I was terrified. Oh. So you hunted all around the country with him, whitetails, turkey, and things like that. How did the writing, he wrote obviously, but what you say you won a writing award? What you've written extensively. How did that come about, you think?
It was, I think, Loch Ness. It was an international writing contest for high school kids. And it was fairly prestigious. And in fact, in my class, a girl won it also, and got stacks of mail from colleges that were unbelievable. But you could go just about anywhere with some, and they would help you. But it was the subject of my story was my first year.
Really?
And yeah, they just had you write for like an hour, and you just wrote for an hour, and that's what you turned in. But my opening line, you have to have a catchy line. And my opening line was, I followed the Amishmen through the starlit darkness. And that was it. And that would grab you. And I was on a trip with my dad and his buddies, and some of them happened to be Amish. And an Amish guy took me into a stand and dropped me off. I was 13 in Pennsylvania. And it just described that feeling of that morning. So,
well, for a 13-year-old to come up with a creative line like that opening's pretty impressive. Did you read a lot growing up?
Yeah, I've always been a reader.
Yeah,
enjoy reading it. I think it is good for your mind for sure to read and expand your horizons.
So do you think the reading, the writing also lend itself into the filming?
Yes, because same thing, you have to tell a story, and you have to tell it in a way that's interesting to the reader or the watcher. And there's storylines that need to be done to do it right. So sure, it definitely helps.
Yeah. Some of that, when I first started writing, I got some mentorship from some successful folks, and that was the one thing that stood out to me. And everybody always told me I was always a storyteller, and they're like, you can learn to write, man. It's the ability to tell a story that really matters. But the whole thing with the writing, then telling, don't tell me, show me, put me there in that moment, so you can see that starlit night following the Amishment through the woods. You're there, right? You're in that moment. That's what's powerful about that storytelling. So looking at going forward, I guess you grew up, it sounds like an ideal life. You did what you wanted to do. My youngest son, Logan, much the same thing. He didn't win a writing contest. He won a carpentry contest. The state of Tennessee has this competition where they give you blueprints, and it's a 2-man team, and all these general contractors are the judges, and he won it, and he got on the spot job offers from all these folks. And Mom, God bless her, she had a blueprint for his life, but he had a different one. he said, I don't want to go to college. I want to go into carpentry. And so he did that for about a year and a half, and then decided he liked moving dirt more. So now he's driving, dozers and skid steers and moving dirt and fishing and hunting, and just loves it. So, much the same, found out a way to he's finding his way, as you did, to do the things you want to do and make a living and be content and happy along the way. Tell us about your family.
Well, I'm married to Marie. We've been married for over 40 years now. We had a son. I think it was 6 years into our marriage. She had infertility problems, and when she finally did get pregnant, I got to look at this word. She suffered from a condition called preeclampsia. And we just about lost her. Her blood pressure was sky high, and they sectioned, and we had our first son, John, and she came from a real large family, and she wanted more kids. And if you don't have a lot of money, it's hard to get adopted kids. And she looked around, and she actually found this place in Alabama, Catholic Family Services, and they had always black boys to adopt. They did not ever have any girls. The people kept the girls, and for some reason the little black boys, there wasn't a waiting list, and we were able to adopt a boy that was 6 months old, because Alabama, you have to terminate the parental rights in 6 months, so they keep them in foster care, and then at that time you can come down and pick them up. And it costs more to do our home study in Michigan than it did for the adoption. They just wanted to place these kids. And a good story of this is she found this place, and she asked me, what would you think about adopting a black baby? And I'm not racist, or I don't think I've ever been racist. I probably made remarks through my life about stuff that were, but I never meant it, I guess, or you learn and you grow as an individual. And it wasn't that I was scared of adopting a black baby. It's, could I adopt a black baby and love it like my own? Could I do a good job as a parent? And during the weeks I thought about this, one day Marie and I were driving down the road, and it was a hot, sunny summer day, and we came up on this little bridge, and there was a little black boy and a little white boy. They were both wearing bib overalls, and they were fishing, and they saw us coming, and they stood up straight against the bridge, and as close as they could to the guardrail, and were smiling, and they waved at us. And I felt something go through me, a wave of warm joy. And Marie just looked at me, and I looked at her, and I kept driving. That was like Saturday night. And Monday morning I was driving to work, and the sun was coming up, and it was coming through my windshield. And I felt that sensation again. And I swear it was God telling me, adopt those, or adopt it. It was one at that time, adopt that boy, and I'll take care of you. So it was really that's probably my one religious experience.
Well, that's powerful.
And yeah, so we ended up adopting one. Then we were worried. We live in a little redneck town, and worried that he wouldn't have any company, and they still had people or boys down there, and we adopted another one, Zach. Gabe was the first one, Gabriel, and Zachariah was the second one. And my wife always wanted a girl, so you can't get a girl down there, but I found an adoption agency up here in Michigan, and called and got references. And this one was kind of strange, because the mom's picked the family.
Huh.
So a girl up there had gotten pregnant, a white girl with a black dad, and had a girl, and they saw our pictures with, I think, the white boys and the black boys and the swimming pool and the farm. I was working a lot of hours and trying to make a nice life for the Marie and the kids, and she just picked us. But the nice thing, or the bad thing about adoption in Michigan, you know what they charge you for adopting a baby that's a ward of the state? 10% of your gross income.
Wow.
Can you imagine
Wow.
where you could use that money to put them through college or set up a fund?
It's interesting that they would come up with an equation like that. So it's totally variable based on who's wanting to adopt.
Yeah. So I guess it's their way of raising money, but it seems pretty pathetic the way I don't want to get into politics, but I thought that was strange that you would basically steal money from a family that wants to take a kid and raise them as their own.
Yeah, provide a good life for them. Absolutely. So you've got a total then of 4.
4 kids. Yes, 3 boys and a girl, and the girl was more drama than all 3 boys put together.
well, I've got 2 boys and 2 girls. I said, man, middle school with girls is pretty darn tough. I've done some hard things.
Yeah.
That's rough.
You know what's worse than a 13-year-old girl? Nothing.
I believe you. Suddenly they're aware of everything, what people say, what people think, their emotional roller coasters. I'd come home, I was just, oh my gosh. Of course, I was gone 6 out of 12 years. And so I missed a lot of that. So every time I complain, my wife puts me in my place. She's like, you didn't live through half of it. So I don't want to hear it out of you. I was gone the whole time. But no, they all turn out good in the game. I always tell people, don't worry, it's rough middle school, but they become humans again later on.
That's for sure. They grow up.
They do. I've got 2 grandkids now, and I got my second daughter is getting married in the first week of September. So slowly but surely weaning them. Well, tell me about the whole idea for Vision Quest and going into the filming stuff. How did that start?
Well, Daryl Kedor was my partner. We had both taken a class from Great Outdoors, so we knew how to video and shoot for an editor and how to capture the right sound and turn in good stuff. And the market just kind of dried up. If you weren't wearing the right camo or shooting the right bow, they didn't want your footage anymore. I was making pretty decent money selling footage for a few years, but we decided we had all this footage and we enjoyed it, that we would start our own company and try making traditional hunting videos, which we did. And the Traditional Vision Quest was the first one, and it was kind of a year in the life of a traditional archer, what you experience, the shoots and the carp shooting and hunting and practicing and selling videos like that. People won't buy them. Ken Beck ended up buying 2,000 of them, I think, to do as a giveaway for promotional product, or we would have lost our rear end. And so that wasn't very good. We did some stuff for hunting outfits, went to Africa and would make a video on their operation so you could show what it was like. And that was fun, but it wasn't a money maker. It was more of a trade. But again, it's very enjoyable meeting people. But when we made the Masters series, that's when it really actually paid off. We didn't know it at first, but we hated people joining traditional archery, and who doesn't want to shoot a traditional bow? But if you go out and you can't hit anything, it starts getting frustrating, and it's pretty easy to quit, I think, for someone that doesn't have a burning desire. And we wanted to do this and show all the different ways to shoot, different gear, and went all over. We had a lot of sponsors that chipped in on the first two. It was supposed to be one, but we had so much good input, we ended up just making two and gave the sponsors two videos for the price of one. So they liked that. And I think it caught on, and we have like Dwayne Martin, one of the finer shots, bare bow shots. He said he learned how to gap from watching Rod and Masters one. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there was really nothing out there, and that's the interesting thing for those that really didn't live through that whole transition from compounds to then the resurgence of recurves and longbows, and it became somewhat there in the 90s a lifestyle. Like when you said you were a traditional archer, you had to wear the right clothes, wear the right fedora, it became this lifestyle thing for people. And so if you didn't shoot like that, like I remember sitting at Twin Oaks Archery, bow hunters down here, and people would sit and look at a guy shoot. And if he paused at anchor, they would say, that ain't traditional, he's aiming. And I'm like, well, he's hitting what he's looking at. That really is what matters, right? I mean, the arrow's going where it's supposed to go. The other guy, he's just kind of gripping and ripping, and his arrows, he's hunting for him over there. But it was, people really judged folks on this lifestyle there for a while. And I feel like Masters really opened the aperture for people to see there's a lot of different ways to shoot a bow. And the crazy thing is, it wasn't new. I mean, people had been doing a lot of this stuff for, back in the 40s and 50s and 60s. It's just, for some reason, that kind of gap in there, a lot of people didn't realize that people did use to aim the bow. My dad, on those rounds, those American rounds, he used to tell me these stories of people had a tennis ball, and you'd put your tennis ball in front of the target, which was your gap, and you'd aim at the tennis ball to hit the target. And he said the oldest trick in the book was to kick somebody's tennis ball on the way back from the target, move their tennis ball so they missed the shot. But they were, that's in the 40s and 50s, even back then. But anyway, this I am so confident that, thousands and thousands of people had no idea what gap shooting was, certainly not what string walking was. Face walking you showed, which is, for those who haven't tried it, is really complex because it's hard to stay in alignment on your face in different places. But you really just open things up for people to, hopefully open their minds to different ways of shooting. It certainly influenced me as well. And I had been shooting from about 1972, 73, and not hitting very well. And I too, Rod's a mutual friend of ours. And I went to Rod and said, I want to be really good. And he started coaching me, and I was able to, in a very short period of time, about 18 months, win IBO Worlds just by listening and applying the things he taught in Masters. Of course, Masters 3 was my go-to. I bet I've watched that thing, I don't know, 100 times. It would be an understatement. I would say the whole thing with Larry and Rod both, and that. So the whole archery community is indebted to you and Daryl's willingness to put the stuff out there. It was very timely. The sport's really changed a lot since then, huh?
It really has. I don't think there's the judgment like you were talking about. Oh, he's aiming, or that's not traditional. I think everybody kind of realized that the way the world is, we're all pulling a bow back and holding it with our own strength and shooting it to the best of our ability, and enjoy whatever. If you want to shoot an ILF target bow and string walk, that's no different than making a self bow and scraping it out and shooting that. You can shoot them both the same. There's a lot of joy, and it doesn't really matter how you find it, I don't think, what in the equipment.
I totally agree. It's and the older we get, I think the better we get about that. I tell a story to Logan. Logan hunts with a compound, and that's what he wants to hunt with. So I'm perfectly happy with that. But here several years ago. He gets a little bit bored sitting on the stand after a while, but there's always squirrels active. He loves squirrel hunting. I think he thinks he's an Army sniper, squirrel hunting, shooting it. You know, he's got a scope where a squirrel's head's the size of a watermelon at 100 yards and a little 22. And so he came to me in the middle of the rut one day and he goes, "You want to go squirrel hunting?" And I remember I started to respond. And then I thought, "Yes, Logan, we'll go fishing if you want to be with me, your dad. Whatever you want to do, if you want to go to the woods, let's go." It's way more about those memories that you talked about that you made with your dad than it is anything else for us at this point in our life, I think. So what does this year look like for you? What all you got planned?
Well, as I mentioned, Marie and I are going to Tumba Station in Australia, and that'll be an eye opener for her because she's not much of a stalker. Mm-hmm. So that'll be a new world opening up. But that's beautiful over there too. I really wanted her to see that. Then we're going antelope hunting back in Colorado, where we've went the last 2 years, and then we're going. We have an elk hunt with the boys down in top of Texas. Have you ever met Scotty that owns that?
No, I haven't.
Scotty Campbell. They're good guys. It's in the mountains of West Texas, and it's really wild and big down there.
Yeah,
big, huge ranch. And then we'll do our whitetails, and then we're going back for the first of the year and hunting mule deer again with Scotty there at top of Texas.
I lived in El Paso for 3 years in the early 90s, and they had introduced that oryx herd out there. And of course, I was flying helicopters. I had them mapped out everywhere. And the antelope, the mule deer, and then those oryx did really well. I don't know if they're hunting them out there or not now. Southern New Mexico and right just north of El Paso there. I think so. Yeah. I think they are hunting them. Yeah. Cloudcroft and from there down the Tularosa Valley there, they were doing really well. It looks like Africa. So what of all these, I mean, you've hunted on 6 continents, and I gave you a heads up on this to kind of think about it, because as I look back through, I did a video here, I don't know, 6 or 8 years ago, I guess, and you sent me probably 25, 30 pictures of you with critters all over the world with a longbow. And of all of it, what do you have a hunt that's the most memorable?
There's each, as you know, every one is very memorable. I think maybe the one I've worked the hardest for was a Dall sheep up in Northwest Territories. It was a backpack hunt with a young guide, and we struggled to get in within bow range, and the closest I ever got was 56 yards, and it was kind of a do or die moment. But I had coaching from Rod. I'd worked on that face walking, and I knew where to aim, and I put one just a little low on the 8th day of the hunt, and the guide blatted, and it still stood right there and allowed me to shoot another arrow and just raise it up just a little bit, and it just center punched it. But I was just physically shot by that time. It was a rough hunt, and eating freeze-dried food after 8 days, it wears you down. But it was very rewarding and an accomplishment.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. It's an 8-day hunt?
Well, it's a 10-day. I was running out of time, but I was shot. I was trying to keep up with a 20-year-old guide and covering ground, and we could see him, but seeing them and you glass them, and sometimes it takes 6 hours to get where you glassed them, and then you have to find them again, and it was steep. I was in fear of my life several times on steep slopes. I felt the cold, clammy grip of Grim Reaper trying to pull me off. Yeah. So
you wrote an article about this, because I remember reading it.
Yes.
So speaking of fear, Have you ever been on a hunt where you really, I mean, I've got one in my mind and I'll keep it here, but have you ever really been in fear?
Well, a couple times climbing, but the biggest fear of an animal I had twice. One was a brown bear. I was videoing. I didn't have anything but a camera and a tripod. I'd already shot a black-tailed deer on Kodiak Island, and I had to take a nature call, and the guys went on ahead. And when I got done, pulled my pants up, popped up, there's a brown bear walking right toward me. And everyone says, oh, they can't see very good, so don't worry about it. But the wind, the wind was coming from him to me, and I just didn't move. I thought, well, he won't see me. And he locked right in on me and stood up and started coming. And I had the video camera in my hand, so I just turned it on and recorded it. I figured it would be a bluff charge, but he came into 20 yards and stood up and was looking at me. And I had an adrenaline rush, like a fight. It wasn't a flight. I knew I couldn't outrun it, but I was ready to do something, and it dropped down and came again. And then I dropped the camera, grabbed the tripod, and I was going to try and hit a home run with his head, but he came up to about, I don't know, maybe 10 yards. It felt like 10 feet, but then turned off. So it was a bluff, but man, I was pumped up like I was in the fight of a lifetime. And
very likely we're about to be.
Yeah, I just remember when it ran away, I was just everything seemed a lot nicer. The sky was bluer, the grass was greener. God was good, but
Ooh.
It was nothing like some of the stuff you guys have done on you guys are the real heroes, but I felt like I was lucky to survive.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Cape Buffalo was what I was thinking of. That wasn't so nervous, huh?
I was just worried that I wouldn't get him, but I shot him in the open about 15 yards running, and that was a rush, but I wasn't scared.
Yeah. Cool. Well, it's those experiences are just amazing. I'm just glad that you take the time to write about them so the rest of us can share them, in those experiences. Not everybody gets to travel the world like that. Anybody out there, obviously your dad, but that you've looked up to that was a mentor for you over your life so far?
Well, for shooting, definitely Rod Jenkins, as you know. He's just he's a wealth of knowledge, shooting knowledge, and never runs out of things to say. My wife has never taken his clinic. She helped me write the articles, helped do the videos, and she finally took his clinic a week ago. I don't know if you knew that, but
no, I didn't.
She's shooting in alignment, and it's unbelievable. She's got 2 inches more draw. Just everything is better. She's all excited, and I just don't know why she would never listen to me. And I asked Rod, I said, why does she listen to you and not me? And he says, you can't coach anybody you're sleeping with. So I guess, but yeah. So
well, if
for
she
shooting,
gets much better, you just need to hang up the bow and go to doing nothing but filming and writing about her adventures, because she's already doing pretty darn good.
Yeah, she was. Her consistency, I think, is going to really rock it now. So sorry for the guys that come over to shoot with us, because they're gonna be in trouble, I think. For the hunting part, it was always Fred Bear and Bob Swinehart, Howard Hill, those guys that went on those international adventures. I don't even know why I thought I could ever even do it. I was a carpenter, and all I ever did was work hard, but I was smart enough, I guess, to save enough to take care of my family. And I wasn't Scroogey enough to just save all my money. Those adventures I don't regret any dime I ever spent on any of them. So.
Right. Well, you've been all over and done a lot of hunts. Is there one out there that's on the bucket list that you've never done, you really want to do?
I'd like to go back to turkey again and go after the ibex. There's something about a animal that you tried for once and you didn't get, or one that you haven't hunted. I like that sense of newness, but to be honest, with the international travel and stuff anymore, I don't know how many more I have in me. So,
yeah. Are they hard to hunt?
Yeah, they put you with a lot of people. There's a lot of government. I think I had 7 guys that I had to be with me by law. With a rifle, it would be easy, but with a bow, you got to get through the first few days of trying to let them leave you alone enough to climb up there. I think if I could go there and hunt them like we hunt here with a backpack and a tent, I think I could easily get a lot more opportunity, but you have to start from the bottom every day with a bunch of people that you don't really need, and it can get in the way of hunting hard.
Yeah. What do you get the most satisfaction hunting? What's your, if you can hunt nothing else but this critter, what would you chase?
Oh, I'd probably chase my deer, but the whitetails, that's just I started out hunting those first, and I'll probably end up hunting those the last thing. So they're always have a place in your heart, and autumn wouldn't be the same without them.
I agree. It's my favorite as well. And I really got into the turkeys there for a while. They are fun to chase, but there's just something about a whitetail that is it's unbeatable to me.
Yeah, if turkeys had horns, they would really be cool.
Oh, well, Denny, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today. You've really not just, I hope it's not lost on you the impact you've had on the traditional archery community through so many forms and over several decades now. Not what, I couldn't wait to get the old traditional archery magazine and read your articles. And before I'd ever met you, of course, reading those from your dad. And then the video series came along and I was in heaven a while. I had all of Eichler's stuff on VHS and I about wore all that out. And then here you come along with traditional Vision Quest. And I was able to enjoy those. And I know I'm not alone. So thanks for the impact you've made, and thanks for taking the time to talk to me today.
Hey, no problem, Jimmy. Thank you for your service. And I do want to mention that listening to your podcasts have been very inspiring to me. And I can't remember the guy that does the burpees every morning, but I get up now and do 10 burpees every morning, and awesome. I hate them.
Well, he hates them too. That's Dean Carnazza said. Yeah, and that's what he said, but they're accomplished, right? They're done once they're done.
Yeah, and it kind of makes your whole body creak and croak and crack, and the rest of the day is easier because they're done.
Absolutely. All right, Denny, thanks for the time and take care.
You bet. See you later, Jim.
Dark roads and a hero passes by, another one's gone to the other side.